Welcome to the 8th election of American history. It occurred in 1816. From November 1st up to December 4th, President Madison, during his second term, had to deal with the War of 1812. The war against Britain was still raging on. The war had many key points, the first one being the Battle of Lake Erie. An American victory was a key naval battle that gave America full control of the lake throughout the rest of the war. Another monumental point was the Battle of Thames in 1813, fought against Britain and Tecumseh's Confederacy. The battle ended as a loss for Britain, with Tecumseh himself dying. Furthermore, the Battle of Horseshoe Bend in early 1814 happened, led by famous general and future president Andrew Jackson. It ended as an American victory against Native Americans and ended the Creek War. Some throughout the war wanted to conquer the British colony of Canada, but that would only be achieved via defeating Britain utterly. One of the worst moments of all American history was the Battle of Bladensburg in 1814, a humiliating loss that would lead to Britain entering the capital and burning Washington, D.C. This was the last time a foreign enemy sieged the capital. Thankfully, Madison and his government were able to hide nearby, but the loss was felt throughout the nation. Britain did this out of revenge after America burnt down the upper capital of Canada during a battle. Since the US capital was burned and needed time to rebuild, people used the old brick capital for government stuff. Another major event was the Battle of Plattsburgh, a key turning point in September 1814. An American victory that made sure that Britain wouldn't invade New York. Thus, America during peace negotiations wouldn't lose land. And now for the Battle of Baltimore, another major event, which was an American victory. During this battle, fun fact, Francis Scott Key was inspired to write the earliest version of the Star-Spangled Banner, the US national anthem. Finally, the last key point was the Battle of New Orleans, by far the biggest battle of the entire war, led by the iconic Andrew Jackson. This American victory was for the history books. Even though Americans were outnumbered, they dealt an extremely heavy loss to Britain. It was so brutal that even British General Pakenham was killed during battle. Pakenham was brother-in-law to the first Duke of Wellington, a great leader and military genius who defeated Napoleon in the Napoleonic Wars. During this time, the Treaty of Ghent was finished that ended hostilities between Britain and America, meaning that finally the War of 1812, after a grueling 2 years and 8 months, was over. At the same time, Federalists secretly met in New England to talk about their grievances, but this only sunk the party even more. In late 1815, the Napoleonic Wars ended as Napoleon himself was defeated. Peace was restored in Europe and America. For the 1816 election, the nominees were James Monroe, Secretary of State. Fun fact, Monroe crossed the Delaware alongside Washington during the Revolutionary War. Back to the nominees, another nominee was Simon Snyder, Governor of Pennsylvania. Daniel Tompkins, Governor of New York. Up next, Speaker Henry Clay, but he declined to run in the end. In a similar way, some wanted war hero Andrew Jackson to run, but he declined in the end. At last, the Democratic Republicans nominated James Monroe and Daniel Tompkins for vice president. Monroe was another politician from Virginia, and if he would win, that would mean that 4 out of the 5 presidents would have been from the same state. The Federalists nominated Rufus King again, alongside John Howard, for vice president. Howard, who was a former senator and governor of Maryland. Madison was popular after the end of the war. Many people were ecstatic and patriotic, which helped Monroe, while the Federalist Party, with their last dying breaths, ran Rufus King again, hoping for a miracle in 1816. And the winner was James Monroe won, becoming the 5th president in American history. Monroe won in a landslide with 183 electoral votes against Federalist King, and Daniel Tompkins became the 6th vice president in American history. Rufus King and the Federalists again lost in a landslide. This was the last time they would even run a candidate for president. Also in December, Indiana became a state. It strong-armed the government since people had voted in this election and wanted their voices to be heard. This election marked the end of the Federalist Party and brought the era of good feelings to America shortly in 1817. In the Senate, the Democratic Republicans kept their majority, winning 26 out of the 38 seats, with at least 19 needed for a majority. For the House, Democratic Republicans expanded the majority, having 119 seats, 26 over the threshold. Democratic Republican Henry Clay was Speaker again after he took a short break in 1814. Monroe took his oath of office on Tuesday, March 4th, 1817, in the old brick Capitol. The era of good feelings would begin, and America's nationalism would skyrocket. And thus, the 8th election of American history came to an end. Thank you so much for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe. Stay tuned for the next video.